Hello again. I know it's been a while since I've done any art drawings or anything, but tonight I'm going to change that. I'm going to go ahead and jump into a drawing. I had an idea in my head as to what a woodland path would be, and I'm going to just kind of draw straight out of my mind. I normally like to do this sort of thing for practice, but maybe this will turn into an interesting drawing. I have no idea. So I've already started a new layer, working in Photoshop, and I'm going to try something different. This time I'm going to try and stay more focused in the artwork and see what I come up with. I've been messing with some different ideas for, trees. I remember when I was in college, and even after that, I would get a lot of criticism on what my trees look like. And since this is sort of just the sketch zone right now, I'm like thinking to myself, well, what do I want this to look like? So maybe, I like to start either at the roots or up higher. See what kind of tree I'm going to get here. When I was younger and I lived overseas, there were these old trees in the front lawn. And I remember how if you ran too fast, you'd end up tripping over the root system that stuck out. And that always fascinated me. It looked like, well, I hadn't read The Lord of the Rings at that point in time, but I always thought, man, later when I read about the Ents and that, happening in The Lord of the Rings, I thought, wow, that's some really trippy stuff. These trees getting up and moving and doing this sort of thing, and being kind of bent, and I loved the way they were portrayed in Peter Jackson's version of Lord of the Rings. That was just gorgeous. One of the problems I tend to have is that I always get kind of stuck pretty early on certain details in the trees, and one of the things I've seen is that sometimes you can go a little bit too crazy with details early on. But I'm just going to draw and have some fun in this tonight. I've had a pretty productive day. I don't know about you guys, and really enjoyed some of the stuff that I managed to get completed and finished. Had a little bit of freelance come in, which was great. Knocked that out. And before, I'd struggled a little bit with that, where, I'd get some freelance in and that would sort of dictate the day. And I was starting to get into a bit of a rut where once I got that in, although it was great and I appreciated it, it would start to... I would put myself in this mind frame where I'm like, well, this is all I'm going to do today is just this freelance stuff. And I wasn't going to do anything else. Like everything else I did, I was like, no, I need a whole day to do this, and I don't have time to kind of doctor through what else I need to get done. Well, this is a nice looking little tree. A happy little tree. Oh man, I don't know, actually I don't know how popular Pluto Television is, but it's a streaming service, and it shows like old reruns like Family Ties and other movies. In fact, last night I was watching The Naked Gun. Hilarious movie. Love those movies. And they always have a PBS stream on there that has different things, but most of the time it's Bob Ross. And that is some of the most relaxing stuff to really get into. You start feeling like, oh, this is good. I can dig this sort of thing. And I think he's been lampooned so many times that I think people tend to forget like just how pivotal he was in bringing art to the masses and allowing people to want to paint. And there's still a lot of people that use his technique and his way of illustrating these paintings out of thin air. And a lot of it was that he grew up in, or not grew up, and over his course of his career, I believe he was in the Air Force. And I only remember that because of the song from Epic Rap Battles. But during that time, he had a lot of time where he spent time in Alaska and other areas, I think in the Pacific Northwest. Could be wrong on that. And whenever he did, he could remember because he saw these things and he painted them and he worked on them. And so much of this was drawn from his own memory and what it looked like to him and representationally, in real life. And I've always envied that. I there's some things I can draw and I feel like, oh, hey, I did a pretty good job with this or whatever. And, to a certain degree. But then there's also points whenever I'm like, oh man, if I'd used reference on this, I probably would have gone a little bit better. But trees are one of the ones that, growing up, man, I used to hang around and climb them and mess around in them and stuff. And so I always felt like, well, I know what a tree looks like. I don't need reference for this. But the truth is that I get easily caught up in a certain kind of tree, which is like sort of a stunted older tree, and they tend to look more like olive bushes. I had somebody tell me that one time. So I've started to try and go, okay, well, what does a tree look like? What can a tree be? And I'll spend, like, when I have the chance, especially during the summer, whenever I'm working on my little potted garden out back, there's a tree in the center of the yard, and it is really a set of is the top part of a tree. When I first saw it, it was the funkiest look. I thought it was a bush, and it got chopped down to, well, there was two of them, and one of them got chopped down to basically a stump and just flattened over. And I couldn't even tell you where in the world it was in the yard anymore. But the other one is like this splaying factor of just limbs shooting out, and it's freaking gorgeous. And I think it's just because it's this canopy that's really close to the ground, so it's all these little offshoots. And I don't know what kind of tree it is, which is terrible. I know I've looked it up a couple times, and I was like, oh yeah, and as much as I love trees, I don't know enough about them. Not an arborist by any stretch of the imagination. But I love that trees have their own story to tell. And they have, they've got just, even, when you look at a tree and it's got like, the grass growing around the roots and stuff, and the roots seem to reach out forever. They're wrapping around, rocks and that sort of thing. They look so cool to me. And I remember thinking whenever I was living in Arizona, how there weren't a lot of trees. There was a lot of saguaro cactuses and other things, sagebrush, stuff like that. There wasn't anything like big trees. So I was spoiled growing up in Italy for the years that I was there as a kid, seeing, these massive old growth forests and trees and stuff that were just right out of a fairy tale. I can totally understand why people, always go back to the reference point of, medieval Europe for their reference points for any sort of, fairy tale, fantasy, that sort of thing. And but there's a lot of other beautiful places, like everywhere from India to China to, the far north with the Inuit, that you can tell stories from. But there's just something about the trees. There's something about this sort of thing that is just cool. And I've always thought, from having grown up here in Missouri, I mean, trees are freaking everywhere, and you go for a walk and one tree looks like the other, but sometimes there's some that stick out in your mind and you just never forget about. And there's some like that around my parents' area where they live really close to a state park. And I've been walking that state park since I was like 16, 17 years old. And when you see some of these trees, it's crazy to see how they've changed and what they look like. There's a few trees that I'm very close to because when I was in Boy Scouts, I had gotten an Eagle Scout project where I was wanting to plant some trees. And there's an old saying, I don't think it's Hemingway, where you plant trees for a generation that will... You plant trees knowing that you'll probably never sit under the shade of them, and they're really for future generations. And I've always loved that. I that was part of the reason why I gravitated so much toward it. Trees see things and will, there's trees around that have been around since the Revolutionary War, that witnessed the Civil War. Many of them bear scars from bullets and munitions having hit their trunks and grown around them. Many are probably nourished by the fallen. And so for me, whenever I think of trees, I try and think of all the history that lives and imbibes in them, and just how old they are and how curled up and and truncated they are. Pardon me. Man, my back was itching. Of all the times, like when I'm trying to do a video, now my back itches. I have one of those little stupid stick scratchers, but that's upstairs. I've got to get a second one for down here. Anyway, okay, so I'm just going to put some shading on this here. Now, let me see. I didn't really have an idea for what I was going to do with this. You know, like there's always that thing where I'm like, oh, I got this idea. Now I'm enjoying the tree too much. Originally, this was going to be a little woodland path of some sort. But now I'm just having fun adding these on here. I love the little gnarled ends of these. And honestly, if I say this now, people are going to be like, no, you didn't. You didn't do that. I look at the ink work that Bill Watterson did on Calvin and Hobbes. And that one, and also how Charles Schulz would have drawn trees in the Peanuts. And it was all these like really fine ink lines. And digitally doing it isn't even justice. It's just not. But I can kind of evoke the same draggy pen feeling from it and get pretty close. As much as I love working in digital, which makes, you know, doing these videos easier, because then I can get content up faster and that sort of thing. At the same time, I end up really lamenting like how much gets lost in translation, because there's a way that even though I'm drawing like this, there's a beauty to the way, and I've touched on this many times, there's a beauty to the way that the ink flows on the paper. Maybe there's a little bit of it that shoots off the nib or something if I'm using, you know, that sort of a pen, or even if I'm using something like my Copic pens, you know, like I got one right here, and you know, that's mechanical point right there. It's probably not even going to focus, is it? No, it's not. No, it's too close. Anyway, that right there. Okay. Very cut and dry, not a lot of character to it. And then I have others that have much more in them, you know, as far as character, because of the nibs. They're old, they're kind of busted. I like that sort of thing. Although I also truly enjoy a really well working inking pen that still has the capillary point on it and everything that will still drive together. And so sometimes what ends up happening is I feel like, and I've been arguing with myself over this the last couple of days, like, what is this going to be like if I keep going this way? Because I have a whole other camera setup that isn't even ready yet. And I used to use it all the time to kind of blue line pencil in like this and then ink. And it was just a lot more trouble at that time. I didn't have as good of a computer system. I had a lot more things that were holding me back as far as presentation. The camera wasn't as good. Lighting was always an issue. And hopefully I've got a lot of that will be getting better and better as I get a little bit better gear and start showing the stuff off a little bit more. In better light, no pun intended. All right. So let me see here. Maybe there's just some shrubs over here. So this is the one thing I can say that is really good about doing digital work is I can put in some areas where maybe there's, you know, some foliage over here. You know, some bushes back in here. I was looking at this guy that was drawing, or I was watching this guy's TikToks. Boy, it sounded really creepy, didn't it? I was looking at this one guy, and he was drawing these portraits. And the connection to what I'm drawing now is there's a lot of times that I forget how much more detail you can push into something. For a while, I got really scared because my style had evolved into something that was far more geometric, and it's still that way, and it's still very very reduced, very cubist in its form. There's a lot of that. I went completely the opposite direction. I used to draw really detailed stuff, or what I deemed really detailed. It wasn't that detailed, and then I would end up, you know, really stressing out over everything that else that was in, you know, going on with it, and they weren't that successful. So then I ended up moving over into the stuff that I do now, which is much more geometric, much more flat. It's very much inspired by the look of like something like Samurai Jack and, you know, New Age cartoons. And because of that, I ended up losing a lot of the character that I wanted whenever I draw like this. There's a joy in this, and this gives me an excuse to get back into practice. I'm not even going to kid you. I've fallen out of practice so much. And even something like this, you know, which is looking okay to me, is still rough. It's very limited. It's very generic. It's, you know, it is what it is. But because of that, I end up having some misgivings as to, you know, how prepared am I to go live on Twitch, anything like that. You know, your mind ends up filling up with all of these self-doubt issues. You know, you're like, oh God, am I good enough to do this? Do I have the presence? Do I have the character and the charisma, the ability to not say a syllable 3 times in a row? And when I do that sort of stuff, then that's when I start to worry. And it's even more than just, let me pick the right one here. I did that on the wrong one. Okay, there we go. Sometimes I just feel like I don't necessarily have what it takes to get this stuff, you know, done really well. So now I've kind of drawn myself into a corner here. So I have a separate layer that doesn't really have very much on it. It has just that one little mark, but I'm not worried about it. So maybe down here, what could I draw in here? Let's go ahead and switch up the color so we can see it a little bit lighter. And maybe down here, we'll zoom in down here, drag it down a bit. Maybe there's this little guy sitting down here. Okay, we'll lighten this up just a little bit more. There we go. And how do I want to block this in? Maybe he's just a little dude sitting here in the grass. And maybe he's, I don't know. The back's here like this. I don't like that. You know, it's funny. When I start concepting, I start to think ahead of time, like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. That's not working already. And I end up making a million decisions before I even get something completely roughed out. Because what I'll do is I'll draw in where I think the head goes, kind of lower this down a little bit, and then maybe, you know, maybe he's got some sort of sword here he's resting on. His knees over here, coming back. Foot's over here, so you'd be able to see the bottom of the foot there. Shoulder here. Yeah, that's working. That's okay. That's okay. All right, let me switch up some color here. I'm going to do pink. Just to kind of really get the shape of him in here. So I end up doing a couple of different shades like this. I don't draw like this very often. Excuse me while I scratch my back yet again. I don't end up doing a whole bunch of... I end up doing a whole bunch of different colors whenever I'm doing sketching. Sometimes if I don't have a real concrete idea as to what I'm doing, I'll do this so that way I have a kind of an idea as to what something's going to look like. And so now I'm kind of making a decision here, like, do I bring his leg out? His knee would be here. I don't like that. So I go back in, start all over again. Didn't like any of that. And it's crazy because some of it may have been that I picked the wrong color. I decided to go with it pink. I didn't really like that. So let's do this. I don't know. Let me think here. You know what? Let me zoom out here. Let me block in seeing everything on this thing. Not actual size. Let's go to fit on screen. Okay, so maybe what we're doing is a full scale person. So I'm gonna come in here and just, we'll do this. Haven't really decided what I'm gonna do. Maybe it's a female. We'll go with a female figure. And we'll do this. Maybe she's looking up at the tree like that. Upper torso area. Let's go ahead and save this. This is starting to look good. And then standing here in front of this. Perspective is everything, and I had to get the proportions right. At first she was going to be behind that, but now I think she's going to be in front of it. She's got to be in front of it just because of her proportions. And we'll drag this out here. So, let's see here. See, this is where I also end up struggling because I want to start blocking in stuff really quickly. Sometimes it helps to turn off that stuff so that I can, let's see, there's that stray line I was talking about earlier. Put in the calves. And honestly, at this point, since I'm so busy blocking in, I don't really think too much about, much more than, like, well, what do I want her to be doing? What else do I, want out of this? So since I've drawn her where her weight is kind of shifting over this way, over here, what I'm going to do then is go back in here and maybe, let me see here, maybe there's a pack or something here. I don't know. It's funny because like there's a part of me that's like, well, just draw what comes to mind. Don't think too much about it. Maybe she's got a cape that's over the front here. Got this billowing, which will help with some detail like that. And then over here, maybe oh, okay, now I have a better idea. So maybe over here she's got a shield she's carrying of some sort. So it's like not even slung across, it's just a bigger shield she's carrying on this side. And then I hate to do the swords that are strung across the back. I used to do that all the time. I think now because I've been following some people on TikTok and Twitter that are very vehement about like what a sword can do and can't do, I have found myself really moving away from that whole high fantasy trope of, I got this sword on my back sort of thing. And so I don't do that as actively as I used to. So maybe, let's see here, I'm gonna do something like that, and then on there. So now here's where I start to come back in a little bit more, and I'm gonna put another layer up there. I'm gonna grab that one, reduce that down in transparency. So far so good. Every once in a while my computer has this weird hiccup where it doesn't want to record, and I'm always scared that my system will freeze up or do something, so everything else is shut off. I don't know why. It's just something weird that's been happening, and it kind of makes me question things. Like, oh God, what did I do here? So now here's the secondary rough I'm going to start working on. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. Scroll it down. All right. So I don't really have an idea for, whoa, I'm still drawing on that one. Okay, I want that one here. I don't really have too much of an idea, but I definitely want to start getting in some hardened lines. Start getting the jawline figured out here. So head going up on that. This is the other part that I always struggle with too, is just exactly how, because it's easy to hide things when you have a lot of hair, that sort of thing, with a character, or maybe hoods or something. So I end up like oversimplifying stuff a little bit too much. Put it right there, right here. This in here like that. And I think this is one of there's sometimes whenever I'll hit like a look on a face or on a character pretty darn well right off the bat, and sometimes I really struggle with it. It doesn't matter how long I've been doing, or even if I have like a really good streak of drawing going on, it'll just be something that won't come together for me, and I hate it. I'm like, this should be better, but this is okay. This isn't terrible. So we'll draw that jawline there. And then zoom out there a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of blocked in there. And again, this is not the final inking of this. This is something where I'm going to try something here with this. I'm going to try and put in a little bit of inking in this and not color it directly in Photoshop. Actually, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I have all these grand plans, but half the time when I get through them, I'm like, oh yeah, they don't really work. All right, so this is where I start to get heavy-handed, and I don't really like it when I do that because then it affects my inking later. Okay. So we'll make her head, bring the cranium up just a little bit bigger. Maybe a little higher. Yeah. All right. So now I'm just going to start. I'm going to start to build in the figure a little bit. What her overall build is. Maybe her hairline is about right there. Here's her little big. So let's down on the shoulder just a little bit. Sorry if I'm not talking that much. This is always where I start to get a little bit weird on what I'm doing. So we're gonna add another one here, and I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit on this one. This will make or break it for me if this is gonna work or not as an illustration. So this is where I start to go in and tighten up just a little bit, actually quite a bit. So this one I'm also gonna knock down. No, I want that one at 100%. I'm gonna go back to 4, knock the fill back down to about right there. And I'm doing that so that I can go back here into 5. Let me save before something crashes. And I'm going to just start building up the face. So, let me see here. I remember the very first time I drew eyes, I always struggled because I wanted them. I was filling in a lot more detail than what was really there. And I know it depends on people's inking style, but I always struggled with it, you know. And it's weird to me too because like when I've got a pen and paper, you know, I can get closer to the paper, but it's not enlarging it like it is this. I'm blowing it up like 200%, and so it makes it a bit more difficult for me to figure out like, well, am I doing this right? Is this holding together okay? And I end up, you know, second guessing some of my mark making and all this other stuff, and I get a little worried when I start to do that because I'm like, oh God, I'm off on this somehow or something. It just doesn't end up looking that great to me. But this is okay so far. Yeah, I wanted her to have kind of a half. She looks a little high. I've been on a fantasy kick lately anyway because of I almost had Futurama because of Disenchantment. I love the hell out of that show. That is really a good show. I know there's some people that are, you know, like, oh, first season didn't really make that much sense. I think it made a lot of sense. It was weird. It was episodic in some ways, but I really enjoyed the energy that it had and what it brought, you know, to deconstructing the genre of fantasy. And the creator, Matt Groening, probably getting his name wrong. I think I always Going, I don't know. I need to learn what his name exactly is and then say it right. I do stuff like that all the time. He was doing, you know, a really great job on Futurama. The writers were able to do some amazing stuff with that. And I always loved how crazy that show got sometimes, like as far as its deep dives and the secondary language, the two alien languages they had in the show, which were freaking amazing. And they have a hidden one in this show as well too. It took me a while to figure that out. There's actually quite a bit of stuff going on that show. All right. This is where I ended up going a little bit back in later and really trying to fix some stuff. And sometimes, that's the weird part. Like sometimes I just don't get the same vibe off of something I'm doing digitally compared to something I'm drawing by hand. There's just something that'll really come together. And I know that I'm probably just being really intense about what I'm drawing here. You know, in my critique of my own work already. I'm like, oh, this isn't looking right. The other thing too is that I know there's people that'll draw digitally and it seems like they have a real good mastery, a real good hook on what they're drawing. I am not that person. I struggle so much to get, you know, something down to where I'm like really happy with what the overall look of it is. And let's see here. One thing I always struggled with when I was younger was the overall proportion of hair, so that way you could see where the top of the head was, the base of the neck was, and in this circumstance, I kind of want to connect the neck here, but now I'm seeing that neckline really doesn't make sense there, so I'm going to reduce this. I'm going to redraw that line. And so maybe because I think that if she was looking up, her neckline would come down a little bit there. Maybe, you know, maybe she's got that going on. Maybe she doesn't have this larger amount of hair out here, and it's down like this. So maybe she's got that going on. I don't know. Let me turn these off. Yeah, it's looking better. This is one of the things that I always end up struggling with. It's like, is this looking okay? Is this working all right? It's such a strange thing for me because I'll see a character in my head. Sometimes it works out all right, and sometimes I kind of have to make some adjustments for what the character may look like in my head versus what's finally coming out on paper, and it doesn't always work out exactly like how I want it to, and that's okay because this is really just sort of for fun today. Most of my drawings are. I try not to overthink them too much. Okay, so now before I go too much further, I'm going to go back in here. Let's swap this out. Let me think here. Sometimes this is where when I was younger, I would always look at suits of armor. I was in the SCA and I had a better grasp as to what I was working on. But now I need to come in here and start building this up more. So maybe the cape is coming off here, wrapping around the neck a little bit here, so it's more along that line. So it's because I don't really want this to be somebody who's armored. I want this to be somebody who's maybe coming back home or something. So let me zoom out. Let me fit it on screen. Oh, let me see what it looks like next to the tree. She's working out rather good there. That's cool. Okay. So I'm liking that more and more. Now that I've stepped back from it a little bit, you know, not physically, but it's making a little bit more sense to me. So if I bring this down, let me get a little more bold with my mark making here. So maybe, you know, like this, and then that's sweeping out that way. And then coming in like that. So then here, maybe there is a little bit of armor. So we'll do it so this thing is almost sort of resting up on top. Hair's coming down on that. And we're gonna make it so it's up around her neck a little bit. Not really sure how this particular bit of fashion functions, but that's okay. We're going to run with it this way. And then over here. Okay, so maybe we're going to bulk this up a little bit here. And over here, maybe there is some shoulder armor. Here. Some plate coming down here. But if that's the case, and then I want to go back in here and erase this. What layer are you on? Yeah, you're on there. Get rid of this shield shape for right now. And yeah, let's try there. Go back in here. This is where things are always changing. And so then I'm looking at the torso going, okay, is the torso the right size? Did I make this the wrong size? And that can always be a bit of a challenge, you know? Like, are the legs the wrong length? Is this not working? Am I going to have to turn her into a half elf? You know, just because of proportion. And then, okay, then I have to start making some decisions here. Like, does she have a belt? Is there a sash going on here? Something down here. Maybe the sword is here instead. So there's a sword there. Maybe I'm more happy with that. Hang down here like this. So then there's no shield here. Maybe the shield is back here. Like so. And strap that goes across there like that. So then, let me see here. We'll put some knee armor on here. My style is so sketchy that it's hard for me to figure out exactly how to be able to put armor on a certain way. But I also I'm not a fan of drawing adventurers, male or female, in any kind of dainty or superbly slim athletic way, because I feel like, you know, that if they're, you know, somebody who fights a lot or something, they're going to have a different sort of build. I know that's not universally true, but it's kind of what's going through my head right now. I'm going to give her a little bit of a shoulder girth right there, match the underlying shape of the armor over there. So then if that's there and I put that there, then maybe this is floating back here. The sword's a little high. I'm not a big fan of that. Let's get rid of that. And maybe the sword, if I'm slinging the thing down here, the sheath starts down here. Put the hilt here. And we'll bring out handle, pommel out here like so. So that's a little heavier, a little bigger. It would continue down here, back behind. It's weird because there's a lot of times that I'm like, I don't want to draw in all that detail, but I definitely want to get to the detail, and I don't want to have to mess with it too much. And I know that a better planned blue line underscore drawing would do wonders for things that I end up inking. Sometimes it'll freeze me up a little bit, but then there's other times that I'm like, no, this really helped out quite a bit, you know. So I'm always on the fence about that sort of stuff, because sometimes it feels like, you know, I'm getting a really good mix on what I'm working with, and things are vibing and they're coming together. And then there's other times that I'm like, this is terrible, this didn't work, this belt didn't cross right, or whatever. No, I don't like that. I don't know what I was doing there. Okay, that's better. And so then maybe the strapping goes here, and then look this up here. screen, save, and bring the tree in. It's coming together better than I thought it was going to. But I still got to figure out what's going on here with the arm. This is something where I get a little frustrated with myself because I'll jump the gun really quickly on stuff like this and think, oh, you know, it'll be fine. And it doesn't end up being very fine at all. But that's okay. That's okay. Maybe, let's see here. Maybe the arm's moving back this way. And maybe her other hand is sitting here like this so that this one is more akin to this. Figure that out. Oh, wait, I got an idea. Let's give her a walking stick. So then, you know, her hand will be here. Yeah, something along that line. Let's figure that out. Let's zoom in on this. Figure all this out here. So it's going to be holding it. Her fingers are going to be here, wrapping down this way. And then bottom of her palm will be there, like so. So the forearm would actually come out further this way and would be slimmer coming in this way. Maybe she's got a little bit of armor plate mail here. And then, let me see here. This is where things are going to get really sloppy. It's weird because like, I never really enjoy drawing straight lines digitally. They never seem to work out for me. And one of the other things I also have to remember is when somebody's holding something, you know, the fingers will naturally wrap around it a bit more than what we allow, or what I allow for it digitally to look like. Let me zoom out. Put it on screen. Okay, there's that. That's a little bit better. I like that. Okay, that's coming together. That's looking pretty good. I like that. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so then we're gonna save, and now we're really gonna start inking in some stuff because actually, look at how much that face changed there. All right, now we're gonna go here into the final inking area and start inking this stuff up. What are we at time-wise? 44 minutes. 44 minutes to get to this point. This is a really good point to bring up. Sometimes whenever I talk to clients, they're like, "Oh, this shouldn't take you that long." It's like, no, things take far longer than most artists are willing to admit they do. There's sometimes whenever I'll draw something and I'm like, I can't believe I got that done in that little bit of time. And there's other times when I really question. I'm like, man, how did I do this before? You know, where something didn't work out and it took me a lot longer than I remember wanting it to, and all this other sort of stuff. All right. So put this there. And then we're going to go over here. My back is really itchy. All right. I'm going to have to go back in and strengthen some of this line work. For now, I'm going to put this shield back here. Probably go back in and fix something on that, but right now I'm still busy trying to nail all this stuff in. So let's go ahead and put the belt here. You know, I struggled for a long time trying to figure out the right angle for this Cintiq. I had gotten it, and I knew what I wanted it to do. And it actually rests on, you know, those arms for monitors. But it's kind of a weird thing. It was originally on that, and then it was originally on that. I didn't like it because it bounced too much. And so I went back to the original Cintiq holding, you know, tent triangle looking thing and did that because it was just more stable. I was able to keep things together a little bit better. And I didn't like how it would bounce so much and all this other stuff. But I still struggle somewhat with trying to get it to hold together where I want it to exactly. And that's always a big fat point of contention for me. Like, why is this not holding exactly where I want it to be and that sort of stuff. All right. So let me see here. And again, I have to keep reminding myself that a lot of that will go away once I'm done there. And you know what's really weird? Like, even when I'm doing this sort of thing, I don't know why, but drawing digitally, I don't make up my mind to do really, distinct lines that are going to be the final lines. For some reason, I end up still being kind of sketchy, which drives me absolutely bonkers because I don't want that to be the case, right? I want it to be something where it's very defined and, that sort of thing, but I find myself struggling with that quite a bit, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if it's just I have this attitude that anything done digitally is not a finished product. It's weird. It's not. I don't think it's elitism. I think it's just this weird feeling I have about it. It just never manifests right for me, and I can't stand it. I can't stand when I do that to myself because I'm like, come on, dude. You don't have to take this that seriously. See, I'm gonna move. All right, there we go. Move this down here. And this is not going to be, like, anybody who's really into armor is going to notice I'm not really doing armor based on any one period. It's very generic. It's very, and a lot of times with this, warm-up stuff, I don't ever really try and look too far beyond that. I just do what I can and what I remember and that sort of thing. And that's about it. It's so sad. It's so horrible because I end up making it sound like, well, I don't do a lot of research into this. I don't. Not when I'm just trying to have fun and trying to get back to being warmed up again on this. And that's a big issue for me. That's something that I'm not really fond of, that it takes me that long to get back on track with some of this stuff. And I've seen some beautiful, artwork that is done digitally. Blows my mind. Like, I know how to do it digitally in Illustrator, but in Photoshop it is forever like, oh, this isn't like, real this isn't a real painting. This isn't a real thing. And there's people in that blow me away, and it's wild because, like, depending on what I'm doing, I can get something. I think part of it is because I'm never really sure how to go back in and ink something with any real sort of what's the word I'm looking for? With any real sort of purpose. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. It's more like there's no way for me to go back and look at something and go, oh, well, this is a real thing. This is 100% what I'm going to be inking in and doing. I'm really inking. Like, for some reason, there's still this wild disconnect in my head over it, and I can't stand that. Like, it just drives me crazy that I even think that way. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why, but it prevents me from drawing in Photoshop too seriously, which is horrible. Isn't that horrible? Just freaking terrible. I know that some of it is just practice. Some of it is just getting into it and letting myself run with something and turning it into something really nice and being able to use that. Like, what I'll probably end up doing is doing another inking layer on top of this one and taking that one even more seriously. And that's what it turns into, is just layer upon layer upon layer in this thing, and turning into something where I'm like, oh no, I'm really honestly inking this for real this time. I don't know how many people, I bet I'm the only jackass that does this. So infuriating. Because if I had half of my, and I do this when I draw other drawings, I will draw everything out. I do the most finessed blue lines. For some reason, on digital, because I think I don't care enough, I don't think about it, and I'm also scared of my own stupid lines in here. It's really weird. Like up here, okay, so I'm going to try and take this a little bit more seriously, a little more studiously. Let's say that I'm really going to ink this thing in. Okay, and we'll for some reason, I just always think to myself like, well, I can do a little bit more, or I can do a little bit less with it or something, and I always end up underdrawing when I should be really, really running with it, you know? It's just so weird how sometimes it'll just be the kind of artwork I'm trying to get done, or I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for this. You know, I wish I did, because it feels like there's a lot of times when I just don't take my own art as seriously as I should, which is a horrible thing. Not a horrible thing to admit to. Like, I just don't take that freaking seriously, and it's not because I have a real good reason for it. I just don't. Maybe some of it is just that I get a little bored with it. Like, not well, yeah, the drawing definitely, but like there's something that happens when I'm drawing on paper, and it's not just the tactile touch of the pen against anything. It's a lot of different things that come all together at the same time, and it allows me to really get into it and really celebrate the mark making I'm doing, and go nuts with it. And there's some breakdown that happens to me when it comes down to inking, you know, digitally, that I just, for some reason, I'm not able to, you know, put it together in the same way. Now I say that, and there'll be some parts of this that'll really start to come together okay. So maybe here, you know, there's a little bit of cloth here. Okay, so let me start inking in some of this a little bit tighter. The other thing too is that I struggle a lot with trying to figure out my lights and darks on a much more consistent level. And I think I struggle because most of the time I have this idea as to what the final artwork is supposed to look like, and for some reason it doesn't always include my line work the way I think it's going to be. Strap there, strap there, strap there. And then maybe here, maybe this armor on the shoulder is a little bigger. Rolled edges there. We're going to put some straps on this one. Now I'm starting to have a little bit more fun with this. It's starting to come together. I'm liking that. Put some detailing on the gambeson underneath there. And let me see here. Yeah, we'll definitely do some sort of elbow cop armor here. Elbow cop, not RoboCop. There like that. So there's that. That's not too bad. Okay. So now I'm just drawing back over some of these to give a little more strength of line. Some of the inking. Alright, that's starting to come together pretty good. Sorry, I decided to use the keyboard shortcut there instead. So let me go in here now. See, I think the other thing too is because I have a specific way I think things are going to look, then I start to feeling the inking a certain way. Now I'm just going for broke. Now I'm just gonna. No, I don't like that. That was too dark of a line. That's weird. I don't like that at all. Let's go back in here into the head and start detailing some stuff. Alright, save that. So maybe, yeah, we'll go with the darker hair. Let me see. How do I want to do this? I could always do. Sometimes I'll color with. This is going to sound weird, but sometimes I color with the marquee tool, and I'll do a sort of, a little bit of a highlight thing going on, and then go back in and color this out. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll show you. So now, if I'm doing this, there's a defined line in here, and I feel like I can kind of go a little nuts with it. And come down in here. And I can kind of start to shape my line around the ear that was here. This doesn't always work. Sometimes this is horrible. But if I'm going to start making the line work a little more heavy, I don't want to start doing the shading a little bit more on point. Come over here on this. And then do it alongside the face here. And then bring it back up. And then color that in. And drop down here, and we'll draw this in. We'll see how this looks. Hopefully this looks okay. Again, I always end up having these really weird moments of like, oh, this doesn't look as good as I wanted it to. I don't know why. And I know that some of this is because there's ways that people draw and they use Illustrator to do the pen ink, or the specific type of inking they want it to look like. And I don't do that. I don't know why, but I've always struggled with that. Like, it just doesn't end up looking right to me. And it's really weird because there shouldn't be any real issue with it, but it just does. It just looks weird. And drives me bonkers. So we'll put that in there like that. Cool. And then I'm going to come in here. Do a line going down here like this. So we're going to give her a pretty dramatic line here. This will be the line for the hair there. Yeah, I'm liking that so far. Alright. We'll deselect. We're going to hit save. Going to zoom out. So fit on screen. And then let me see here. Yeah, it's already looking a lot better than I thought it was going to. Let me start taking away some of the details here. Okay, so that's what she's looking like. But see what I'm saying? How there's a definite difference in how when I start to take, which is common sense. I start to take my time with the inking and it starts to show up better and I'm liking it and I'm digging it. But there's also the whole factor that I want to be able to ink it in a correct way. But it's definitely helping with the other details underneath, which sometimes I end up leaving in because I like that scratchy look. That goes all the way back to like that Robin Hood Disney movie where Aristocats, and a few other ones had that pencil look to them because they were scanning in the pencils and going from there. It's crazy. Let's see here. See how much further I can get with this here. I'll start having some fun with this, and I've been having fun. What am I saying? I'm going to put in maybe she's wearing, because for some reason her hand is really bugging me. It's really large. So I'm going to put, some. Put in some stuff here like that. Maybe she's wearing fingerless gloves here or something. And then down here, straps are a little darker. Gamison's a little darker. And then I'll put a little bit of a, do that there with the armor a little bit. Let's go in here and start messing with this fabric. So again, none of this is really the way most people would probably ink, but it's how I do it. So we'll just go with that. And maybe a little hard to follow there, but what I'm doing is just dropping in some ink here like this to fill in these zones. Looks a little bit better. I like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to trace along here first. I have no idea what that's going to look like till I ink this in. Oh yeah, that really came along good. I like that. Very nice. I'm liking that a lot. Okay, we're going to handle the cape the same way. Actually, let's go ahead and do the shield back here. So I'm going to ink in this. And then I'm going to go in here. I'm not going to let this touch the shoulder too much. So I want some of that light to show through, but it's definitely going to be darker, right? It's a shield back behind her. Deselect that. Hit save. Now, let me see here. What else do I want to do? Okay, so the cape is next. I'm going to finish this up here. So this one it's on the outside, so I want it to be a little bit more lit. So we're going to draw a line along here for that overextending part. And then, so there's a part of me that wants to do just this. And I think that doesn't look too bad. No, that looks really good. Got all of it right? Yeah. Deselect. Then I'm going to come back in here and do some no, hold on. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this whole shape underneath really make sense. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to come in here and play with bringing this into shapes we do have here and building this up. And then block that in with some color. Yep, I'm liking that a lot. All right, that's working. That's coming together. So then let's go in here, and since this is laying over, I'm going to do the exact same thing and then just start, revealing a little bit of stuff, but not a lot. We'll take care of that line. Ink over that. Deselect that. Now we'll go in here into the... This is actually the very first time I've ever been this succinctly accurate with my inking. Digitally, that is. I can't say that. There have been times before when I've done it and it's worked out pretty good. Use shift to hold down some areas here. Really block this in. And then I'm going to go back over this anyway afterward with either an eraser or some white. We can figure that out later. And then maybe I want to go ahead and drop in some white here. So yeah, it'll be a little bit of a shiny kind of leather. So we'll carry the same thing onto the scabbard. So maybe she does have this sort of black, shiny sort of leather thing going on. Be really careful there. And then bring it down here like this. Bring it up on the sheath. Color that in. Enlarge it. No, almost deselected, didn't want to do that. I'm going to carry that down from above. Saving that. Zoom out. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot better already. It's really coming together. It's nice when something like this starts to work and starts to happen and starts to come together. I'm like, oh God, yeah, this is finally working. Because I know that I specialize, even when I would ink, I specialize in blocking out a lot of areas and high contrast stuff, which is fairly common for comic art and that sort of stuff. But it's because I come from a background that really struggles with trying to define areas for color. And for some reason it works really well when I'm doing watercolor or marker, but digitally, unless I'm blocking out big areas and building shapes like I do in my other illustrations, this sort of thing, I would never really know how to go back in and add color into this. I would really be lost. And I might try it once we're done. I'll save this as a black and white master and then take the line work from it and see, and the black inking that is, and then take that and see how far I can go with it. Otherwise, I don't know. Makes me nervous again. Palpitations just thinking about it. All right, let's get in here again. And okay, so the sword's got a little bit of detailing on it, but I do want a little bit of shadow on here, so we'll just give it a little drop of shadow down the handle. And then I'm going to go here into the hilt. Drop a little in there. And then down here, I'll get a little bit more creative. So because of how we did this, now I'm going to have to really strengthen this out quite a bit. That works. This is going to work. And then I'm going to take that same shape and I'm going to start here, go up, and do that. Do the same thing over here, where I'm staying away from the edge a little bit, and come back. Oh yeah, I'm liking that a lot more. It's weird how I don't, like, it's really strange for me that I'm not doing, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not doing more with the line work as much because I'm enjoying doing this with the marquee tool and creating big black shadows that I'm far more comfortable working in, which is building up the shape really nicely. Let's see, come across here. bring it back this way. And then fill this one in. And what we'll do is we'll bring this down here just a little bit on the pant leg. Do it over here on this one too. Fill those in. You know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I know what I'm going to do. So maybe she's got longer pant legs, so this is going to be a little bizarre, but let's give this a shot. So maybe the pant legs. Yes, I know. Ooh, that was really loud. All right, so maybe they're almost like, I forget what the term would be. Not necessarily bell bottoms, but maybe they're just, you know, they're open legs a little bit more, or not open legs, open over the foot a little bit more. And then that allows you to get a little bit more of an shape in here. Let's see when it works out. This is probably going to look terrible. If this looks terrible, I'm totally going to get rid of it because I can, because it's digital, so that's okay. I don't know. That's working. That's working. Okay, I actually like that quite a bit. I like that quite a bit. All right. And then we can go up in here. Maybe there's a little bit of that, you know, like this seam or something that's right there. We'll color that in. And then we'll go down here on the bottom. And now I'm not actually gonna, I'm gonna try this. I want to see if this works. So maybe there's, you know, a little bit of a, I don't know how this would look. So maybe the boot goes here. And then I'll put a shadow here on the side. Color that in. Put a shadow down here on the boot. Same thing over here. So let's go ahead and go with do that. And we'll come down here. Okay, there's that. And then color that in. Hey, it works. It's not perfect. It's fine. It works. Okay. That's already looking way better than I thought it was going to. I'm really, really, really happy with this so far. And then a little bit of a shadow down here on the bottom. Maybe there's a little bit of a shadow from where she's standing on the grass. I go in here and fill this in. Yeah, that's looking better already. I really am enjoying that. Okay. Oh, and the cape needs to drop down a little bit here. So how do I, well, because the cape, maybe not. Maybe I'm just overkilling that. But I do have to drop the sword scabbard down. So that was here. Okay, that's working. All right, that's really working. I'll start drawing in some lines there. Go back to the face. Start working on this. I think the face is okay, but now I've done so much other work on here that I'm like, well, maybe I need to really fix this. So what can I do here? All right, let me try and get the eyes a little bit more on point. It's weird because I know, like some of this stuff is so second nature for me whenever I'm doing normal pen and ink, like in real time. And then when I get in here for some reason, I don't know what I'm doing. It's strange. I can't really explain it. I don't really know why it happens, but it does. And then I struggle a lot. I'm like, But at least with this one, it seems like it's going pretty good. I mean, can't complain. Let's strengthen that line up there a little bit, and then strengthen this nose line here a little bit. It's been kind of interesting right now that I'm feeling a little bit more free than normal on what I'm drawing and what I'm doing, because there have been some days where I didn't feel that comfortable with what I was working on, or something just wasn't coming together, and I couldn't really explain it beyond that. It was just odd. Okay, put that there. I think some of it was just because, I had, there's this weird thing where I end up imagining that I owe myself a lot of time to work on something. Like, I have a bunch of stuff for Ardor that I'm still trying to piece together and work through, and I was looking through the sheaf of notes over here earlier. I say sheaf of notes, a pile of notes, and was trying to figure out, like, well, what out of that works, and writing is kind of a secondary thing I do. I write a lot of poetry, but it's different whenever I'm, in the mix trying to really get down a story. I struggled with it a lot when I was working on Pagan Zoetrope, and I didn't like that part of it that much. It wasn't as much fun as just getting in and drawing, and that always bugged me. I don't have a good explanation for why, but it just did. Because I always felt like, oh man, this, like, parts of this could have been better or something. I don't know. It was a weird time for me with Pagan Zoetrope. I wrote a lot of that stuff in a sort of semi-autobiographical way. Some of it was from a highly fantastic point based on things I went through. But I did enjoy it. I did enjoy doing what I was doing with it, but it just, I don't know, it's just weird. Wish I'd had a better grasp on my storytelling capabilities. And I am taking some courses on how to get better at that, because, like, just like anything, whether it's art or whatever, you want to get better at what you're doing, and you want it to be something where, you're really proud of what you put together, whatever it is, that sort of stuff. All right, so now I'm also going to do a little bit of a shadow here underneath for the neck. Hopefully this doesn't look stupid. No, that doesn't. Okay. It came together far better. I thought it was going to. I'm glad for that. It has a nice, like, old school D&D sort of look to it. That's really cool. That is really, really cool. Okay, so now we're almost at 1 hour and 21 minutes that it took for me to get to this point. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is think about what the rest of it is going to be like, inking out and doing that sort of thing with it. And what areas I want to color in and what areas I'm going to make bigger. That'll be a lot easier because I think with the tree it'll be a lot less stress to do that and work through this sort of thing. So anyway, I'm going to end it right now, and then I'll jump back into this and finish it up. So that's a good hour and a half run right now to get this put together. This really did come out looking much better than I thought it was going to. And I think I had set out with the idea that I was going to do something very ink-wise, Larry Elmore-like, like early TSR, that sort of a feel. This is not as good as what Larry Elmore does, or did back then or anything, but it's something where I really have been pining to get back into that ink and pen stuff that I did. And some of it has just been a little bit, which is shameful to say, lack of studio space, lack of planning, lack of all that ahead of time. And I wanted to be able to do this using the traditional methods, drawing the stuff in there and having fun inking in and blocking all these areas out, because that's something I've always loved. But this really came together far better than I thought it was going to. So with that, I'm going to stop the video right now, and then I'll jump back in probably tomorrow or the day after. So this may turn into a good 3 to 5 hour long video to upload to YouTube. That's going to be a trip, right? That's going to be a huge thing. But if you made it this far, hopefully you'll stick around for the rest of the video. See, this is where I start to think, I'm like, do I do a couple parts of this? Do I break this up into there? What am I doing with this? Maybe I do break it into parts. I'm not really sure. I don't know. No, you know what? I'm going to wait until I get the tree done and then figure out some other stuff and then go from there. Because, again, this was just for fun, so it's not a big deal either way. But in the event this is the end of this video, then thank you for watching. Or maybe I'll be back. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so I'm back in here on this, and I haven't made a decision yet as to how far I was going to go with this. I thought about it last night, and I was like, well, I'm maybe overthinking this a little bit. I don't know. We'll see what comes of this. So I'll go in here with the tree. I'm going to go ahead and do another layer, drag it down underneath here, and go ahead and save this. And we'll see how far this goes. So, the interesting part, and I struggle with this, whether it's digitally or whether it's traditional, is keeping the same excitement that's in the line work I did here. Now, true, there's a part where I could go in and I could, just since it's digital, turn this stuff black. There's no reason I couldn't do that. And I might actually try that. You know what? That's actually not a bad idea. See, yay for the win on that. So let me go ahead and I would normally be Control-Zing this, but keyboard's in a little bit of an awkward place to get to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save again here real quick. And let's go ahead and duplicate this layer just for now. And turn that one off. Hit save. I save like crazy all the time. Let's go in here. Go to adjustments. Wait, that's the wrong one. That's not what I wanted at all. What am I doing? Oh man, I totally did the wrong thing there. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. So, get rid of that one. See, that's what happens. I wasn't naming my layers. I was getting carried away here. There it is. Let's go ahead and make a duplicate of that one. You just witnessed somebody make a mistake. All right. So, that's what I should have done before the video, because nobody wants to watch me type out all the layers and name them. Right. So now let's go in here. I knew something was wrong. I was like, wait a minute. Nothing amazing is happening. All right. There we go. Saturation doesn't matter. Yeah, well, that kept exactly what I wanted, and I can kind of play with this since I have the other original one in here. So I can go in now, start messing my with my shadows a little bit. And kind of carve out some character on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to put this on another layer just to save myself some time here. I was recording a video just earlier for Instagram, and something that horrified me, but I've noticed this recently, like when I was younger, and I'm kind of glad that at least this microphone doesn't seem to pick up on it very much. I always wondered if, this is going to sound so stupid, if I was like a heavy breather or something. And I know I've had things before that got ruined when I was trying to do something where I'm trying to record, some footage of maybe, I don't know, the cats or something, or just, just in general, just things. And it horrified me when I played it back and I was like, what is that kind of noise? And I was like, oh my God, why didn't anyone tell me this? And it was just so freaking disturbing, and I thought, how long have I done that? Because that's not a pleasant thing to discover. Just because I thought, wow, all this time I was getting quizzical looks from like people or birds or other animals, and they're like, "Hey man, you all right?" And I bet that's what they were thinking, like, what's wrong with this guy? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. It's just a very strange moment. And then it made me really self-conscious when I was playing through games and stuff like that. I had somebody comment on a game session that I was playing that I had up on YouTube, where they were asking, what is that noise in the background? And it's this electric water bowl I have. It's a little water fountain for my cats. And I never even thought about it. But now it's become all that much more prevalent that it's just in the background. And I kind of wish that I got to remember to start turning it off. There's so much preparation that ends up going into, and I'm not even that great at prepping for videos. I'm not. I sometimes will just kind of run and gun it and go, whatever. I'm going to do this right now. And I hate that. I hate taking shortcuts on video production. Part of it is because I'm in a hurry and I always feel like, well, I've got to get this done. I got to get this out. And there's no reason for me to hurry. There's nothing I've got to hurry about, but I get that way. And I overlook things like water fountains in the background or heavy mouth breathing sort of things. Oh, Lord. It's okay, though. The beauty about today is that most people don't even remember stuff unless you do something incredibly stupid, with immediate sort of things that, fire up. Maybe cancel culture or something like that. That's been a hot button issue, hasn't it? I felt kind of bad because I honestly, when I watch television and stuff like that, I know that a lot of people, actors, directors, stuff like that, aren't necessarily always going to be the kind of people that I want to meet in real life. There's that old saying, never meet your heroes or whatever. I can understand that. And when The Mandalorian let go of, God, I'm forgetting her name now, but the lady that played Cara Dune, I was a little sad. I liked how she handled the character. I know a lot of people were pretty critical, saying, oh, she's stiff, she's awkward, all these other sorts of things. Sure. A little bit. Quite a bit. Depending. I mean, she certainly wasn't going to win any awards playing that character necessarily, but I did not see on Twitter what she had posted. I've only seen reposts and retweets and what was covered in the news. And I guess she was comparing being a conservative in today's world of either cancel culture or something. I'm probably paraphrasing the hell out of it. To being a Nazi. No, being a Jew in Nazi Germany. So she was saying that because of her conservative values, that she felt like a persecuted Jew living in Nazi Germany, something to that extent. I mean, go look it up. Certainly, don't just go off of what I'm saying here. And I can imagine that that's not great. But it seems strange, doesn't it, that we have like this, because social media has effectively become such a lighthouse that we are, that anything can become cancel culture pretty freaking quickly. And, there's the whole thing about, I even saw this on TikTok earlier. There's this one lady that I don't know totally what she does, but she's involved in like stuff with Dragon Con or something like that. And she was talking about an author who had said something to the effect of, get woke, go broke. I don't know. It was a very odd comment, but it was talking about how when companies or efforts of any kind, entertainment, when they go extremely woke, as the saying goes, that they begin to lose money because there's people that just don't want that, and then that's also indicative of how cancel culture ends up happening and all of these sort of things. And I know that, I grew up, in a time when there was a lot of really insane things on television and you could kind of make fun of people and stuff. And it wasn't great. I mean, in fact, I was watching this the other day and I thought, wow, I'm really surprised that some of the old Eddie Murphy shows are still available on Netflix. I think it was Netflix. If it wasn't, it was Hulu. Because he goes on, he makes fun of everybody, which is kind of the same sort of thing that South Park is known for. But even when South Park came out, there were certain things that people still, they turned the other way. They're like, yeah, whatever. It's funny. Or, even if they were offended, it was just part of the thing. Now, I really wonder how that affects a lot of those creators. But I think it was a brilliant stroke in that, Matt Stone and Trey Parker did this whole thing where, forgot to turn off my notifications on my phone, where they brilliantly have it that, it's a kid, Cartman, Kyle, any one of them, stating these really atrocious things at times. And for some reason, that's more palatable. I don't know why. I mean, well, no, I do. Because when I used to hear former art students of mine, really young, like 6th grade and younger, say some really bizarre things, it made me laugh. I couldn't help it. It was just what happened. And I always thought about that. I thought, I would probably be offended under most other circumstances. And sometimes they would say some things that were very offensive. But I also know that, growing up, I had pretty offensive thoughts on some things. I made fun of people. I did stuff like that. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it was right. Not even remotely. But it took people that cared enough to want to clean my clock, both figuratively and, physically, that taught me some harsh life lessons, like maybe shut up, don't say these things. And I know there's a lot of people that, they get on this weird bandwagon thing where they, I don't know, I feel like there's this whole thing that happens where, the moment somebody really gets upset and starts going off about something that's not woke or, whatever, on either side, really it goes back, it's too liberal or it's too conservative, whatever. The moment that happens, you get a lot of mob mentality, which is exactly the source of a lot of cancel culture. And it can, since it goes both ways, it seems to lean more on the left, being able to dogpile on the other side. But maybe that's just because the majority of my feed is manipulated to show me that. And that's not some crazy psycho thing. I mean, this has been proven. People that worked at the social media places from Facebook to Instagram have said, no, there's ways we could dial it up, tweak it, and everything else like that. And one feed will feed it this way. The other one will do it this way. A lot of news outlets are totally guilty of that sort of thing with clickbait sort of headlines or just getting a response from people, because that drives payment, that drives interaction, that it drives all sorts of things. It's a very jacked up economy. And when you think about that, to me, I was like, well, that's really not cool. I mean, that's pretty freaking terrible. Because in my head, I'm like, well, all right, but whatever happened to just allowing people to read something and the news be impartial or facts being presented and then making a decision from there? Because I'll be honest, it could come forward, like, I'll use a perfect example of this. No matter how any one thing could be presented, you're going to get people that are very conservative that go, I'm still not comfortable with it. Okay. You're going to get other people that are like very liberal, and they're going to say, I'm still not comfortable with it. You don't need all that excess, stimulus in the form of these headlines and the way they're written. It's just painful to be online anymore. And it makes it really difficult for me whenever I want to post anything or share anything, because there are times whenever I've thought, oh, I want to make this joke or I want to talk about something. And of course, there's always those stalwart people that are like, I'll say anything and do that sort of thing. Yeah, you can, but you can also just as quickly be completely canceled out just by saying or doing the wrong thing, which admittedly, and this is the other part, isn't necessarily a bad thing. And the reason I say that is because there needs to be some accountability. There needs to be something there. But the big thing is that I don't know why, and maybe this is just from my years of having taught, but you get people that will, say something like that, and they're like, well, if you're going to complain about it, if you're going to be a little bitch about this or something, and just, you can't take it, then don't say anything. And it's weird how people will turn into this taunting sort of way about things. Like, you can't even have a discussion because one or the other will just step up and start making fun. I don't even have a really good explanation for it. It's just really strange how it plays out sometimes. And I've seen perfectly sane people say some really inane stuff that it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't understand it. I wish I did. Because I think that there was never a time when it was really worth discussing things and feeling like, there's going to be, a proactive bunch of thinking. We're really debating. I don't think anybody has ever really sat down and debated something so well that they've managed to change minds when it comes to political things, or even just arguing at a bar or something like that. I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Because that's not the mindset that people are in. And I'll never forget, my whole thing is like, after Trump lost, I was like, all right, let's move on. Not because I was supporting him. Far from it. Most of it was like, all right, that's cool. That doesn't mean anything's fixed. It doesn't mean anything's going to be any better off right now. We need to see what this next guy's going to bring into this and how this is going to work. I'm not saying that as an anti-Democrat either. I'm not. I'm saying that there's a lot of people that the moment, like, instead of saying a lot of people, I'm going to tell you something that I know firsthand. When I used to work with any sort of group that did stuff environmental, or maybe it was animal rights or something, on that line, they dreaded when a Democratic president came into power. Because just like people I know who are saying, oh God, thank God, Trump's out of there, right? He's done. Okay. What changed? I mean, granted, yeah, he's not the president anymore, but really what changed? And when that happens, a lot of people get so relaxed, they just stop on whatever else they were doing. If they were involved in, a group maybe trying to help recycle stuff or feed the homeless or do something like that, it's been shown that that sort of stuff starts to relax because, like, well, there's people in charge now that are going to take care of that. I'm going to go back to watching Netflix. The exact same thing happens on the other side to a certain degree. And again, this isn't a show or a segment where I'm going to be talking about politics, but it's more into the cancel culture kind of thing where, just like with Gina Carano, that's her name, when she was saying what she said, it was amazing to see how quickly everyone reflexed on that. And a lot of it was probably being talked about as well in the boardrooms of Disney. Like, oh God, what are we going to do about this? Is there any damage control we have to do? Is there anything here that's really jacked up? How badly are we messing this up? Are we messing this up? Should we rehire her? You just never know with any of this stuff how it's going to really break down. And it's really weird to me. It's just strange. Okay, so I'm going to get off that. I don't want to talk about that too much more. It's really easy. Isn't it crazy how easy it is to get riled up about some of this stuff, and then next thing you know, you're talking about conspiracy theories and the Loch Ness Monster, which both of those are far more fun to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about that either. So I kind of got lost here. Like, there's a part of me that wants to add more back behind, but there's something I'm really enjoying about just this here. So I'm really not sure where to go with this. Okay, that's just an empty one, so I'll get rid of that. That's the underlying drawing there. It's the shading. Ooh, that looks kind of cool. I like that. Also, this is such a nice thing to be able to do, because aside from a time, you know, a time lapse of any kind whenever I draw anything, even if I didn't have this recording, being able to go in and take a look at this is really cool, because I can break down exactly where I was drawing and think about things and go, well, did I get too liney with this? You know, what was I doing here? That sort of stuff. And it really helps out quite a bit. All right, so with this one, I can do some erasing here. A little bit of extra stuff showing up in here that I'm not really fond of. And then, yeah, get rid of those lines there. I noticed that when I was drawing this before, I was like, oh, I got carried away here. And I wasn't enjoying that at all. And then erase those here behind this. That as well. Okay, now I need to go back in and fix part of the figure here, because that's bugging me. So we're going to go in here and kind of thicken up the lines a little bit and fix this hand. There's a lot of this that I started looking at and I was like, oh, I don't like that. This isn't working. So for here, let's see here, what am I going to do? Let's back out just a little bit, like so. Yeah, that looks decent. And then we'll go ahead and darken that in. I'm just going to go ahead and work directly on this inking area, so that way I can not worry too much about that, about having to unify it later. I was really pleased with how some of this started to come out. I wish I had taken a little bit more time. This arm now really bugs the hell out of me, and I wish I had done this in some layers, but that's okay. That's okay. And I'm enjoying the sort of sketchy feel that it has. But now I want to go back in and give it a little bit more refinement on the edges. Because there is a point where something can get so sketchy. I remember that was some harsh criticism I got one time. And rightfully so. It was absolutely rightfully so. Where my sketches were so rough, they were so wild, that I got some pretty heavy... At the time, I thought it was unfounded, but the criticism was legit. It was, you know, maybe next time when we're asking you to come up with some concepts, maybe the concepts aren't so rough. And this was for a card game that was being based out of Korea. It's been some years now. And I was supposed to work just on the backgrounds, and then, you know, when the backgrounds came together pretty well, they were like, oh, that, you know, that's okay. Do you want to try your hand at maybe some character design? And I thought about it, and I was like, well, sure, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. You know, I'm pretty good at that. And I'm not terrible at character design, but at that point, I don't think I understood quite what I needed to do with it to make it really come together. And I've struggled with that for years. I've struggled with that. And I think some of it just comes from the fact that in my head, I have, this idea of what I want things to look like. And I never really take the time to figure that out, and really refine them as much as I should. I think some of it is because I'm always telling myself, this is a weird thing to admit, but I'm always telling myself, well, I'll get back to that later. Well, I'll come back and do this again later. And that's not how that works. There's a saying when you do voice acting or any kind of audition, really, that it's said by my favorite voice actor in the world, Steve Bloom, that the audition is the job. And that's now even what this is like. Me putting this out online and letting everyone see how I work and this sort of thing is a big fat window into, hey, this is how I, create my stuff and how I work. And I know that some people may be impressed by it, and some other people might be like, what is he doing? What is this? What is he putting together here? None of this makes sense. And that's something that you have to be kind of, aware of, because you're never really sure who's going to see it. You're never really sure, if someone's going to like it or any of this stuff. And that's a valid thing to be worried about, because if you're trying to get hired, if you're trying to get a job, if you're trying to get any kind of freelance coming in for yourself in something you do, you want people to like it. That, you're going to get people out there like, well, I do what I want. And yeah, sure you do. And if you do, fantastic. But there's something to be said about also understanding your audience and what you're creating for them, and knowing whether or not something really does or doesn't work. Like here, I'm going to go back and forth over this van brace and argue with myself on some of the line work. It's driving me nuts. And sometimes, though, this is the other, I think I mentioned this in the previous segment that I was just recording for this, I can get caught up too much in the details, and then before you know it, you're kind of stuck, putting... This is one of the reasons I go so quick and fast with the details, is because I don't want to get stuck rendering something over and over and over. That is not what's on my idea of a fun day. Not because I don't believe in trying to get something correct, but it's easy to overwork an idea to death, and then you start losing the life in it, which is, pretty much what I, like even this here, I'm like, I don't want to think of that. Maybe I'm bringing it in a little bit here. Because you can kill a design. It's almost too easy to do that. See? And right here, I just overlooked a bunch of... Oh. This is the other thing, too. Like, because I'm not drawing on paper and I've got this at a weird angle, and I'm now measuring my marks out a little bit more, I tend to lose some of the excitement in the line that I was working on. Bring this down here. I'm going to outline that guard a little bit. There we go. That's coming together. Sticking up the calf muscle there a little bit on that. I was okay with this. I think I wanted to do something else, but this is fine. Again, this was just meant to be more of a sketch feel to it, so that's okay. All right, now we're going to go back in here. That's what that is. So we're going to erase that out. I know some people may be going, why don't you just paint white over it? Well, because then I'd have to go in between each one of these lines, and I don't really feel like doing that. So I'm just going to erase out anything here. Draw that out a little bit more. Maybe, let me see here. Maybe the bottom of this has a small design on there. This is sometimes where I like, to go back in and have a little bit of fun with this stuff. Let me save this. And I make up a, like anything, you just think about patterns you've seen in life or whatever, and you start adding them in there. And I went too far on that. I don't know why I did that. You see that? I jumped way over there. I meant to go here. It's because I get carried away talking, and then all of a sudden I'm not doing what I wanted to do. So maybe these are just small circles. Small, very rough circles on the bottom, just for sort of a designy element. Nothing more than that. I was a really big fan of Prince Valiant type artwork. For those of you that don't know, it was a phenomenal story and a phenomenal bit of artwork in newspapers growing up. Just seeing something like that, I was like, my God, how do I get there? What do I do? Because the artwork was just mind-bogglingly good. And I remember as a kid thinking, I don't care what I do, I've got to get to this level of excellence. Because to me, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was this graphic novel level of illustration. And more so even than Bill Watterson's work. But of course, I remember Bill Watterson's name. But there's some artists like that I would see the stuff and be like completely blown away. And think about all the little details that they would, put in things. And it made me question, like, oh, well, this is why this isn't working out that great. Like right here, like I know that I need to go in here and put a little bit of fabric crawl. Like maybe not here, but like without messing it up too much. Put a little bit here. And then go in here. This I'm not going to make a solid black color because I've got the belt there. So I want to be able to keep some little bit of this sort of loose. So maybe what I do, and again, if this doesn't work, then I save. Then I'll just end up doing something else. But it's too much. Make the pen a little bit smaller. See, and that's the other thing too, is that like I think I have a little bit more control when there we go. I always freak myself out whenever I'm doing digital inking because I forget what the point size is and then it doesn't end up looking right to me. A lot of things go kind of haywire. Yeah, that's better. I like that. Just a little bit of extra, I mean, and to carry that pattern over, I guess I could even do that out here on the bottom with the cape. Starts to, you know what? I like that. Put that back in like this. And again, everything I'm doing isn't necessarily the correct way to illustrate. I have had this conversation with so many people before, like, oh God, don't look to my drawings as anything that's a reference point that you should be utilizing on your own work because it's really not accurate at all. But I also understand that I pick up on a lot of hacks that I'll see or not hacks, but other things people will do. And I'm like, oh yeah, really like that, that's really cool. I want to do that. That's exactly how I ended up doing white outlines around the majority of my older work. It was Timothy Bradstreet. He's an illustrator. He does a lot of different work, but I was first exposed to his work when I used to play the role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade. And he did so many black and white illustrations for that. It was just amazing. Just beautiful stuff. All right, so now I'm going to drop some shadows in here. But I'm going to do it on another layer. I'm going to save this. And let me see here where I want to put these. Well, I know I definitely want some shadows along here. There's that one. I'll do a little bit of one here. Do one back here like this. You'll notice I didn't really shove it to the back yet. I just put it up here at the front. This is part of the reason too I work with thickening up the shadows a little bit, is because I want a little bit more play area to be able to do stuff in. Okay, that's good for now. Using that same pen size. And then go back in here like this. I will tell you that this is something I really wish I could pull off in traditionals. You know, be able to block one off without using masking fluid or tape or anything else like that. That's one. This is something, I don't even remember when I picked up doing this. I'm not saying this is right either. But it was kind of like I wanted to be able to do a Bernie Wrightson sort of inking area without meticulously, you know, like trying to build a shape and go from there. And the other thing I do too is as I'm working on things, I'll zoom out a lot more on it. Like I'm really enjoying this. And this is really a nice sketch exercise that went into the area where I wanted this to look very Larry Elmore-like. It's still my style. But it's been ages since I could really sit down and just kind of have the time like I do right now to be able to do that. Part of it, though, honestly, when you're creative and you're working on stuff like this, you want to be able to, have the time to spend on this stuff and really just go crazy with it and have fun and don't apologize for spending time like this. I do it all the time. Like, well, I really need an illustration that I can use for this, but this turned into something nice too. Now, what it actually ends up becoming, I don't know. I have no idea. I just, I have no answer on that. And I'll end up going back through this and cleaning this up and doing some other stuff with it. But maybe, one thing I could do is put a small sun back here. So go in here. And again, this is one of the beauties of being able to do this as a digital person. Well, maybe this is going to be a night scene. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this or not. So let me give it a shot. Let me see here. Let's go ahead. It's because I was going to make it. At first, I thought, I could do this where it's during the day, right? But then I thought, no, let me try something different here. So maybe what I'm doing, this is going to seem really weird, but this is how my brain thinks on so much of this stuff, right? So what I want to do is go ahead and reduce the selection area some. I'm going to jump into this and show you guys exactly what I'm thinking. So there's a part of me that's like, well, maybe I just start, putting some line work in here, like so. And then it becomes much more natural for me as I go in here to have this line work showing up like this. It's kind of odd because I can see where it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get that around the limbs on the tree. And maybe there's a little bit too much curvature in there, right? But the beauty about this is that I can do something like this and figure out, well, does this look okay? Does this work? And then if not, then I make a decision from there and go, okay, well, no, that's really not working for me. So I can hit delete, not a big deal. So then I'm like, all right, is it more where, it's a black and white thing? I don't want to really do any kind of watercolory effects of this. Maybe this is just going to stay a certain look. I'm not really sure what it is. So now I'm going to go back in here and let me see here. See, like that's almost too heavy for me. I don't know. See, there's a part of me that wants to do that, but then I'm like, maybe I'm overthinking it. So that's not a good way to go about it. So maybe I go in here and I go inverse, go back to my circle. And I don't know. This is going to seem a little backwards, but I'll drop some white in there, right? So if I were to take out the back, you would see that. So then I'll hit deselect, and for this one, I'm going to go ahead and do a stroke around it, and I'll make that black. So now that's there. So that doesn't look too bad. That's probably a little better than what I was doing earlier. And, It's a little bit of a, look at that. Right there, that little mark. Get rid of that. It's just leftover artifact from when I was doing the squiggly dance across it. And maybe, things I'll do then is just do some clouds, but I'm going to go real thin line with this. So maybe there's, but see, I don't know because the effect's on there, so I don't want that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create another layer, and then I'm going to merge these two, so then that stroke stays there. So let's merge those layers there. So the stroke's not, it's there, but it's now become rasterized. And now I will go in here and do a real, we'll do just a little bit of a cloud coming in. That's too little. I'm almost certain I made some stupid line on there. Let's see here. No, I don't like that much. This is whenever I want to draw from a distance, but I know that, and also I feel like turning this, but even though it's on a Cintiq, I can't do that, and this isn't as fancy as the new Cintiqs are that do that. So maybe I'm coming in. No. Yeah, I was gonna do the old selection tool thing, but I was like, no, that doesn't really work. So still too heavy. Not liking the thickness of that there. And sometimes I have to go at it and go at it and go at it until I go, nope, I like that. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. But there's lines on there. So now I'm going to go back in here. And just wherever there was a tree. Like I said, this is a really backwards way of doing it. And other artists probably would have colored in their tree and not had to worry about all this line work going across. Because there's always that chance you're going to miss something. And it looks super amateur when you're done. Nobody wants to do that. That I can let happen. That out. Take that out there. Yeah, that's okay. That is okay. All right, so there's that. And let me see here. What else do I want to do? Well, I mean, I guess I could also end up putting in some grass blades and stuff down right here on the bottom. Just, you know, some, not like that. Just some little bits of grass and stuff here. Just kind of like in the shadow there, underneath our feet. Just so it seems like there's a little bit more foliage around there. So this really became less and less about a path, even though she could be technically walking on one. Going back here a little bit. Something like that. Maybe she's just stopped for a second and decides to look poignantly past a tree. I have no idea. I always struggle with layouts like this that I don't think out 100% because to me it seems a little bit off. And again, this is me being my own worst critic on this sort of thing. It's not that bad, but I'll tell myself, no, dude, that's not good. That doesn't look good. So, and then even with some of the shading that I did on there, maybe I can come back in here with my really fine pen tool and add in just a little bit more detail. Not a whole bunch. Let's see here. Now this one I'm going a little thicker because I can, but I don't like that. Let's make it even smaller again. So we're at 20, we'll go down to about 8. That's looking better. No, it isn't. I always end up arguing with myself about this sort of thing. And I know that everyone's going to look at it a slightly different way, but I just want the line work to be similar to what I did over there, but not exactly close to what I did on her form. And I've started to fall back in love with the idea of using line work more like this, shading like this. Mainly because I found my old Bernie Wrights and stuff, and I was like, oh, God. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's good. I could futz with that all I wanted. Had that been real ink on paper, I'd have been completely hosed. But it does throw into sharp relief down here that really kind of need to do that line work down here as well, too, while I still have that same pen dimension or diameter chosen. So I'll start here. And go over this. I know I've told this story a lot of times, but Bernie Wrightson is one of those people that I wish I had spent far more time talking to. I just said hi and asked him a couple questions and have that interview on my website with him and I think it's Dan Brown and a buddy of mine, Rick Stacy. It's just crazy. All right, what else do I want to put in here while I'm mucking around? Maybe there's a small mountain range back here. So let's put like, no, I don't see it right there. I started doing it. I was like, nope, don't like that. So I don't know. Maybe it's just some tree shapes back here like this. Kind of just fade off there like that. Yeah, that almost makes more sense. There's something about doing understated sort of detailing that really works for stuff like this. And it's been such a long time since I could really genuinely just get in there and start enjoying the inking like this. That is one of the things I can say that about digital inking is it frees you up. You're not worried about dumping out your Higgins ink or, wasting ink on something that isn't quite working out. And this is also a wonderful exercise for me to get back into the whole, hey, I want to start drawing more, but I don't want to waste my time. And I have to get out of that mindset. There's no such thing as wasting time when you're trying to perfect your craft. And there's no such thing as perfection either, for that matter. All right. I'm fairly happy with that. That's starting to look like a monster or something coming out of there. So maybe I should darken more of this. But I know I'm going to go overboard and really end up messing this up. So I'm going to stop here in just a little bit. I think I'm going to call this one done. I was going to add color in there, but man, I am horrible. For some reason in Photoshop, I am absolutely horrible at color. I am not great at it. I don't know why, but I can't do it. And I often think to myself, like, what broke? What didn't I learn? What facet of this did I just not pick up on? So, all right. So, call it there. I'm going to sign that. And then what is today? 3/21. Man, that feels really good to do that. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I may put a reproduction of this up on my Etsy store. You'll notice down here below, there's a brand new graphic down there. It's got my Twitter. That's Podbean, which is a pretty obscure thing, but that's where my podcast is. I do have a Facebook page. I am on Instagram, on Etsy, and on TikTok. And hopefully, eventually, I'll, using the same layout, be able to add Twitch to that as well, too. And then these will be live. So, but that's where you can find me. And then underneath that is theartisanrogue.com, my main website. But you can just look up The Artisan Rogue as a user handle on any one of those things. On Twitter, I post quite a bit. All of them, I'm actually posting quite a bit. I've managed to get my entire schedule down for that, and that's working out really well. So thanks for watching, guys. I really think this came out looking really good. I'm really happy with a lot of it. I know it's loose and just kind of messy in so many ways, but it's been so long since I've been able to do something like this, and I'm just really happy with it. Like, I don't really have any other words for it. It just came out much better than I thought it was going to, and I don't ever really get a chance to relax like this, but that's going to change I'm going to try and do more things like this, just starting from the beginning and showing you guys what the whole thing is. So this, now I did another 40, almost 48 minutes, so almost an hour's more time. So this, to get to this point with this sketch, was about, what, 2.5, almost 3 hours of work to get to this. And this isn't anything I'm necessarily going to use anywhere else. It'll probably just become this little sketch that goes out there, and that's about it. I may tweak it a little bit more after I get done, but I don't think so. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.